Uh, Good afternoon, everyone. So, on behalf of Pune Knowledge Cluster, I welcome you all today for the third Sustain talk series. So, let me give a background of what is Sustain. So, along with what is PKC. So, Pune Knowledge Cluster is an initiative started by the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor, who advises the government of India on science and technology matters. And we are amongst the 6 knowledge clusters which have been initiated all over the country. So PKC works in several verticals, and sustainability and environment is one of that. What we began with was few months back, PKC started with this series called as Sustain. And the idea is that this Sustain series will comprise of public talks, group discussions, workshops from experts from varying backgrounds. So this is a third such talk series which we are doing under it. We at Pune Knowledge Cluster in our sustainability and environment vertical mainly focus on food, water, livelihood, increasing tree cover, and we conceptualize and facilitate projects amongst these. So we try to keep this as our focus area, and based on this, we have started this series, and we invite people who are experts in different fields and who can contribute over here and come and give us such kind of talk series or such things. Now, let me introduce you all today's speaker, Mr. Mandar Kulkarni. So Mandar Kulkarni, he's a certified sustainability practitioner by the GRI, that's the Global Reporting Initiative. He is also a CSR practitioner by the Institute of Company Secretaries of India. And he has completed a course in public policy economics from University of Oxford. He's also an internal auditor, and he has completed a certification in health impacts of climate change from Harvard X and sustainability in Indian context from Azim Premji. He is currently a senior manager sustainability at Praj Industries, and he has worked as a manager CSR in his previous organization, that's Mercedes-Benz, for 7 years. So he has a lot of exposure and expertise when we are trying to talk about sustainability, CSR initiatives. What do organization or companies do when they are talking about CSR and ESGs? So with all of his background with respect to reporting, evaluation, developing, monitoring mechanisms because of his previous organization and now as sustainability lead in Praj Industries, I welcome him today for this talk series of Sustain. ESG or environmental, social and governance is one of the most relevant and important topics nowadays. And we hear these terms mainly in terms of in the corporate world. So like organizations have to spend money for CSR activities nowadays to fulfill their ESG goals also. Corporate sector is very much upcoming, and they are also coming up with newer and newer initiatives so that they can work towards meeting their ESG goals. So with this background, we welcome Mr. Kulkarni over here today. And I hand over it to Mandar, who will take us through his presentation. So the way in which we do this is we'll have Mandar present over here today, talk about initiating sustainable ESG journeys in corporates, which is the topic he has chosen to discuss with us. We'll have him complete all his talk and presentation. And I request the participants, if they have any questions, to put it up in the chat box during the presentation as well as after the presentation, and then the floor will be open for discussion. Welcome, Mandar. We can start now.
Well, thank you, Ashwini. I'm audible. Am I audible?
Yes, Mandar. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Good afternoon, everyone. And I would like to thank PKC first because and also appreciate their effort in the field of the verticals that Ashwini just talked about. And they've been taking many efforts to reach out to the citizen forums as well as experts, and to bridge the gap and popularize different topics and different verticals. So thank you, PKC, for having me. And I'm glad that I'm talking about a topic which is actually being discussed and is nowadays is a it's a jargon that everyone hears about, but less of them are aware. I do get a call from friends in different corporate sectors that this has been a topic and how to start, what all we need to do, and it's evolving topic yet to get mature at national as well as international level. So I will try and share my understanding about this topic with the presentation. I will switch off my camera now just to use the bandwidth cautiously. Let me know, Ashwini, once the screen is visible to everyone.
Yes, Mandar, we can see your screen.
We can see.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. So, like Ashwini mentioned, I'll be talking about initiating sustainable ESG journey in companies. So this title I have chosen because ESG particularly right now applicable for the corporate sector, though it is a voluntary thing that everyone needs to adopt in their own setup, may it be NGO, may it be institute, or any kind of organization where there are risks involved in the kind of services or products that they make. So before we start the discussion, I would like every one of you to take out your mobile phones. Well, usually the speaker says that put down your phone and put it on switch off or airplane mode. But I want you to take out your mobile phone and log on to menti.com, the website. Once you log on to the website, it will ask for a code. You can enter this particular code that you can see on your screen. And there's a question that I would like to understand your views on. Does negative news of a brand impact your buying decisions? You can choose one of the answer, that is yes, it does impact your buying decision, no it doesn't, or you don't follow the news to make your buying decisions. And I'll be able to see the results here. We have only one response. Yeah, so you can see on the screen that it doesn't show your name. So you can be true to this question and answer the way you actually follow while buying anything. We will wait for a couple of minutes to see the responses. Okay, I need active participation on this part of the audience.
I urge the participants to just quickly do this if possible.
Yeah, we can wait for 1 more minute and then go back to the presentation. Okay, don't worry, it is not showing your name, so you can fill up the question. Okay, it's a quite visible from the participants that they do consider the negative news of a brand before buying something. And it's also good to see that there are people who don't at all consider negative news I mean, it is not possible for everyone to read about the brand before buying everything. I mean, I will not go and buy Amul milk based on the news that I hear about them. But yeah, but if it is related to the news of the mixture or something that has to related to the quality of the product that is time and again coming in the picture, then it will impact my decision of buying milk product by reading the news. So we will now switch to the presentation. Thank you everyone for their active participation in this. And here is the take. So how it is relevant to the ESG topic that we are going to discuss today. ESG risks are actually started making public appearance way back, but now it has been consolidated in the ESG umbrella, and it's one of the reason that the news articles, the brand image, it is getting considered by the investors before making decision to invest, to whether to invest in such kind of organization or not. At the consumer or the customer side, we as the consumer or the customer, we are the one of the less part of the stakeholder vertical where we can influence at this particular stage where the ESG awareness is comparatively low. But if you look at the investor side, like the news articles that you can see here, Volkswagen has been fined 500 crore rupees for violating diesel emissions norms in India. Deutsche Bank's subsidiary CEO asked to resign because of greenwashing they did as a practice in the organization. Mars, Nestle, Hershey, the chocolate brands are facing lawsuit in US for having child slaves, having child labor. And companies such as SAP, which has been widely used platform by corporates, are wrestling over the concerns of gender equality within the organization. So on and so forth. I mean, there are n number of news articles you can read by just putting ESG risk to the company in Google. And these kind of public appearances of the risk does impact the decision of the investor, big investors in the organization. So yeah, ESG is proven as a crucial umbrella to document and manage risk. And that's why risk mapping or materiality, which is the same word, are becoming core of the ESG strategies of an organization. So what is it about? If you look at, like Ashwini at the start mentioned, that E stands for environmental, S stands for social, and G stands for governance. And under these three verticals, there are n number of risk factor that are global talk, organizational talk, investors talk, or general shareholders talks as well. I'm not talking stakeholder, but I'm talking about shareholders. So these are influential key stakeholders that make impact on a business. So under environment, climate risk, waste management, energy efficiency, whether they have renewable energy incorporated in their business operations, whether they have strategy around reducing their GHG emissions, water management, how about emergency preparedness? Because presently, even just before starting the today's talk, there was a comment from one of the hosts in the chat box that there is a power cut. So the regular business is getting impacted due to different environmental challenges, different social challenges, and governance related challenges. The bottom of the list represents the biodiversity, and it's one of the key aspect because biodiversity represents the key indicators that are around us that represents the negative impact that decision or activity of a company is making on ground, on the environment. Under the social vertical, usually when somebody says social, then social work or 2% CSR is what comes in our mind as an Indian educated or practicing professionals. But here in ESG, the vertical talks about employees, their diversity, their rights, and also the community around you. So under the social vertical, employee health and safety, employee benefits, that is whether you are getting your returns as an employee back well in time, or whether they are missing your salaries, and what all benefits you are providing as an employer. Do you have diversity and equity and inclusion within the organization? So diversity usually looked at having gender diversity, no, but whether do you have mixture of of all sorts of diversity. As India, we talk about diversity, we do have religious diversity, we do have language related diversity, and all these aspects, whether the employer is considering while hiring people in the organization. Do we have inclusion in as one of the DNA component of the organization policy? Because the the specially abled good quality talent is getting left in out in the market, and they're not getting hired just because they are differently abled. So all these aspects, whether it is getting considered as part of DEI strategy of the organization. Human rights and labor rights are one of the key components which usually get violated. Like in previous slide, I mentioned about child slavery, child labor, or human rights that are getting violated within the value chain of the operations of an organization. And obviously, with 2% CSR law that we have here in India, we are, and the corporates are taking good care of the CSR, and the one point that that is part of social, that is local community. Under governance, business ethics and compliance, so that is aligned to statutory requirement that certain legal frameworks corporates need to follow, and whether they have strong policies and system in place to meet the compliances and ethical practices within the business. Shareholder and stakeholder engagement and their democratic, inclusive democratic approach, that whether they have that, and policies around incorporation of these stakeholders and shareholders within the organization is also one of the governance related topic. Climate related risk as a part of environment vertical of the ESG are now have started taking a center stage in corporate sustainability or ESG reporting. So these climate related risks are classified basically into two verticals, that is transition risk and physical risk. Recently, last week only, Reserve Bank of India has came up with a discussion paper on climate related risk. So for your academic interest, you can just Google RBI and climate related risk keywords to Google, and you will find the discussion paper which elaborates more on these two verticals. Just to brief here, transition risks are further classified into subclassified into four categories: policy and legal, like I mentioned just before, under the governance part, whether the corporate organization have strong or weaker policies towards the legal statutory requirement of the climate related regulations. Like, for example, we do have something called ban on single use of plastic. So the law came in, or the guideline came in picture, and whether corporates have incorporated it as a part of their environmental policy, and whether they are taking action towards lowering down the single use of plastic within the organization. Technology. Day by day, technology is developing and making changes. Like IT sector has made rapid change within last 10 years, and we can see that now I am interacting with you because of the technological revolution that is happening without meeting you. So similarly, on the climate related actions that corporates need to take, the electric vehicles, then the solar panels and reduction in the cost of solar panels, the kind of innovations that we are doing. So whether corporates are taking care of all these technological revolutions that are happening in the climate action section, and whether they are reducing their carbon footprint and coming out in the public and talking about it. Second, the third part is market risks. Market is volatile, getting volatile, and changes are happening which are aligned to the climate action. I mean, here in Praj, I can tell you the live example that not only Praj, but the customers of organizations like us, which provide solution, technological solution to our customer, they are asking whether your climate action plan is ready, whether you are reducing your carbon footprint. So these are market related requirements that are increasing, which talks about reducing carbon footprint and climate related risk of not only their own business, but also in their supply chain and value chain. And like we discussed in previous slides, reputation, that whether not taking such kind of actions are creating news around the brand image. On the physical risk side, there are largely two risks broadly classified as acute risk and chronic risk. And within the acute risk, we have extreme weather events that are happening without any previous understanding, that is cyclone, hurricane, flooding, so on and so forth, and how they will make impact on your regular business. So if there is a cyclone, definitely my consignment, which is on high sea, will not get delivered within the timeline that I have expected to get delivered. And that will impact my customer relation, definitely. And chronic risk, long-term shift in the climate patterns, which, for example, is heat wave. I mean, we have seen what happened in India in this summer. We are also reading what is happening in Europe presently. I mean, there was news circulating about traffic signals and roads and airstrips are melting in Europe and British side of the world. So, I mean, all these kind of risks, whether we have considered them to form our ESG strategy, and these play key role in having your ESG strategy in place. So who does that? Who documents the risk and who make it public that these are our risks and these we are taking care of? It's not a job of a sustainability manager. It's not a job of a CFO or MD. It's job of stakeholders. I mean, people like us who are handling sustainability at the organization, at the corporate end, we are supposed to bring the risk and then consult the important stakeholders, which are internal as well as external. Consult them, screen these risks to all the important stakeholders, get their opinion, and then go back to the board with a drawing on the drawing table and highlight and prioritize the risks that our stakeholders, may it be internal or external, have highlighted as a part that the organization should take care of these many material topics or ESG risk as a priority ESG strategy. So within the organization, we do have employees, owners, and investors, like I mentioned, but outside the organization, that list can go on. But with your support of your board of directors, investor, you need to prioritize the external stakeholders. These are suppliers, producers, customers, and consumers, which actually impact the product and product or service related strategy of the business. While local community, NGOs, which are opinion formers, academia, and experts, and governments, influence externally and creates the risk. I mean, introduction of electric vehicles was not something that came as internal stakeholders demand. It started from the external world. It started from the that to government, experts, academia started making policies, coming up with research on these kind of interventions, whether they will make sense to bring in the market and how it will impact on the business. And then slowly it cascaded down to the suppliers, producers, consumers, and customers. So these kind of understanding need to be brought, and that's why we need to have inside out and outside in approach to prioritize the risks, ESG related risks. So what actually, when I talk about risk, these are both positive and negative impact. It's not the negative only, but the business might be taking some steps, be bringing some products in the market which are making positive change, and that needs to be communicated time and again through your sustainability report, through the stakeholder engagement programs, shareholder meetings, so on and so forth. So the inside out approach brings the requirement that is getting raised through the internal trends which are driving the business, that are issues raised by the internal stakeholders time and again. These needs to be documented well and screened for the ESG strategy. What employees and leadership is talking about, what potential future trends that these kind of discussion internally will bring, and similar to the relevant external trends that will impact the business. So that is outside in approach. What are the largest issues in the world that are making impact on value chain of business? Important stakeholders that are influencing, like I mentioned, that are influencing the decision or the trends, future trends of the business, and potential future trends like the EV, for example, that has created ripples in the market. How this is done? So we have seen that usually what triggers the ESG strategy, what are the risks involved, what needs to be documented, who needs to be taken care, or who needs to be consulted for documenting such kind of ESG risks. Now, how to do it? What usually being followed? So if you look at the international landscape, these are just representation on this slide, but there are n number of guidelines, standards, then rating systems or auditing firms that are coming in picture and playing bigger role. But broadly, there are four standards that are popular and popularly being used in the disclosure of the ESG risks. So these are GRI, that is Global Reporting Initiative, then TCFD, Task Force for Climate Related Financial Disclosures, Climate Disclosure Standards Board, CDSB, and SASB. So recently in COP26 and the discussion prior to the COP26, these four are consolidated now by the International Financial Reporting Standards, that is IFRS, and now converted into one single platform that will be called as the International Sustainability Standards Board. So ISSB is supposed to come up with the new standard of sustainability and ESG reporting by end of this year. The draft is already out in the public. Those who are interested can go and read about ISSB's draft standard on sustainability reporting or ESG reporting. These all are getting backed by different guidelines or different frameworks, and CDP, that is Climate Disclosure Project, is Carbon Disclosure Project is one of the part, and science-based targets are one of the international body that helps you to document, certify, and communicate your carbon credits and set up the carbon emission or GHG emission target for a corporate. So all these kind of mixture of the standards and systems are getting trickled down to some of the indices, which are S&P Global's Dow Jones Sustainability Index or MSCI index. So what these guys do is they have come up with a system where they study the ESG report based on this standard disclosed by the corporates and rate them in the market, and they basically list the top ESG performing companies, which are now, you can see that share markets or the mutual funds are having one of the feed to understand whether it is the top ESG performing company or whether it is having low ESG score. Just to highlight that S&P Global, as one of the example, S&P Global recently uh, taken out Tesla from their list because the tweet, one single tweet that Elon Musk made, that ESG doesn't make any sense to me, and that's how they are delisted from S&P Global's index. This is overall the international landscape. National landscape is something that is really interesting and making progress that none of the actually international markets are making on the ESG front. SEBI, as the governing body for the listed companies, has came up with a standard reporting structure for corporates, and these are based on something called national guidelines on responsible business conduct, and will be called as business responsibility and sustainability reporting. So this is altogether a different standard or a framework that Indian companies will need to follow hence onwards. So here is a brief timeline of ESG in India. In 2009, Ministry of Corporate Affairs came up with National Voluntary Guidelines. As name suggests, it was a voluntary guideline that you can choose whether not to report on NVGs. While in 2012, SEBI made mandate for 100 listed companies to report on NVGs, and the reporting format they built was Business Responsibility Report, which was then further extended and mandated for 500 listed companies. Then in 2019, they removed the word voluntary and they built national guidelines on responsible business conduct. So these guidelines are, as the name suggests, again, it's a guideline that you need to follow. But apart from these, you can also adopt GRI or SASB or any kind of standard and report on these. So these NGRBC guidelines are then given a structure to report on these, which like I mentioned in my previous slide, it will be called as a BRSR, and it made as a voluntary disclosure to be made by 1,000 listed companies, and 2023 financial year onwards, top 1,000 companies will be supposed to mandatorily report on the BRSR. So this is what the principle is about. So when we talk about Indian landscape, apart from the GRI or SASB or maybe ISSB, when it comes into picture, we will have to report on these 9 principles for the BRSR. I mean, slowly they are talking about cascading it to the rest of the companies which are also not listed, like they made CSR as mandatory. Slowly the BRSR will be made mandatory for rest of the country. So I will not go into details of every guideline here, but those who are interested can definitely read about NGRBC principles on Google. So they have also publicized and they have given BRSR report framework on MCA's website, Ministry of Corporate Affairs website. And these are the one who we need to report on. So for example, to promote the well-being of employees, what all we are taking care as a part of governance of the ESG, what all policies do you have for making the employee well-being as one of the DNA or umbrella initiative for the human resources within the organization. So they have set indicators, they have set guidelines for reporting on ESG in a simple form of BRSR. So I will take a quick break on presentation here, and I would like to go to the moderators of this session, that if we have, how much time we have left? 15 minutes? 10 minutes for the presentation.
Yeah, Mandar, you can continue like for another 5-10 minutes. It's fine.
Okay, wonderful. So now I will switch to my web portal, and I will represent here the Infosys ESG report that they recently published, and it's worth reading. I mean, I'm talking on it and you are reading the report. It will reflect the guidelines and principle, how an organization is one is setting the strategy of ESG within the organization, and how they are reporting on it. So the report broadly starts with the index. Then it talks about purpose of the organization, why they exist and what they want to do. Purpose is core of ESG reporting. When you start reporting, you should have a clear purpose mentioned, why the organization exists and what value addition they are bringing, all on all the three verticals of ESG. And here is like a dashboard representation of an organization taking different initiatives under the ESG umbrella. So they are talking about carbon neutrality, they are talking about going to the CSR projects, bringing value in the local community. They are being awarded as world's most ethical company by so and so. They are having ISO certifications on different verticals, and that's how governance plays a bigger role. And through their active business model, how they are bringing different model to the business, and how they are providing employment to the young generation. So after that, they talk about what framework they follow, what report talks about, what framework, like you can read under the framework, they have followed the GRI and SASB, both the standard, and also the report on the TCFD standards. So this is voluntary for you. You have to choose one of the standard, GRI or SASB, and then rest of the standards are voluntary, that you can go and report on them. How they define the strategy for risk reporting, that is approach to materiality assessment, and whether they have taken external assurance for the report that they are making, and that's why they have they had appointed KPMG as one of the assurance company for the report to make it out in the public. So I will not go into details of the corporate overview and message from CEO and so on and so forth. We can directly go to the environment vertical. So here they talk about the sustainability development goals that they touch upon through their verticals. And here the report clearly talks the material topic or the ESG risk under the environment umbrella that they have chosen to work upon as an organization. So this comes on under the internal and external stakeholder engagement, huge assessment that you need to carry within the organization before landing on the environmental risk, these three risks that Infosys have highlighted here. And under that, they mention about the ambitions of every single material topic. Further, to elaborate on this, they, as you can see on left, they need to talk about climate change, what all they are doing under that, water and waste. So like here, they mention about scope-wise emissions and how they are taking care of it. Then we go directly to the water social part of it. And here they talk about material topic on social goals. enabling digital talent, tech for good, diversity and inclusion, energizing local community, and employee wellness and experience. So unfortunately, in broader terms, ESG, many companies are highlighting only their CSR work. But as you can see here, as one of the standard example, and I've mentioned it in my slides as well, that CSR is just one part of the ESG and it's not the entire setup. And under the governance, they talk about under the corporate governance, what all they are taking care, how they are managing their stakeholders, how they are building sustainable and responsible supply chain, and how integrity is being practices, what all policies that they have around these topics. Data privacy, being an IT firm, they have to work around data privacy of the customers, consumers, and the stakeholders, all in all, and how the information is being managed. So here is just a brief example that how a company discloses on their ESG goals, ESG risks, how they are being managed, and what are their targets vis-a-vis the last year's performance, and what they, a stakeholder, shareholder, or a customer, consumer can expect after 10 years will happen with that organization. So with that, I will go again. I will request you all to go again to the Menti. And okay, just log into Menti. By that time, I will try and hide this particular tab here. You guys all are there on Menti. I hope you guys all are there on Menti. Just a minute, technical glitch. Unfortunately, my internet is not working. Okay, so we can go to the slide and you can maybe just raise your hand for one of the answer. I'm not actually expecting the answer, but this is just kind of homework for all the listeners of this this particular session. So now, do you think ESG disclosures will make on-ground impact? Yes, I do believe that corporates are coming out talking about their ESG risks, documenting it, coming out talking in public, but whether these disclosures will surely make some impact on ground or not, I think that's something that as a lesson all of us can take and study more about it, because this surely makes a sense to understand how these disclosures will help and feedback to the discussion draft that ISSB is presently having out in public, that these disclosures will certainly have a gap. But even as a sustainability practitioner, if you ask me, even talking about these out in public create a peer pressure on corporates to take action and not just talk about and disclose about it. So that's it from my side. Thanks a lot. And now the forum is open for questions, I believe.
Ashwini,
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a wonderful presentation, Mandar, and I'm sure to all the people out here, it was quite enriching and enlightening that how do we see the ESG realm and context with respect to corporates and how it's important. So I request the participants to put out the questions in the chat box, or if people can also ask. So Shirish, maybe you can ask your question.
Yeah, actually, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
Shirish, we can
yeah.
hear you.
Yeah, I wanted to know, there used to be a framework, a very similar framework called triple bottom line, which talked about people, planet, and I forget the third P. But that actually also reported on these three issues, effectively looking at the social aspect, people, planet, and profits. Those are the three pillars of the triple bottom line reporting for companies that used to be there. So I wanted to know if this is part of ESG, or is this now a different framework altogether and triple bottom line is not used really? Is that what it is?
Thanks a lot for that question, Shirishji. Triple bottom line approach has been there in the organizations since the industrial revolution started taking shape and creating negative or not so popular impact in the society. So if you look at the definition of CSR broadly, why I'm coming to this topic, because CSR had incorporated the triple bottom line approach. So CSR broadly at the world level, I'm not talking about 2% CSR that India made as a part of Companies Act. I'm talking about the social responsibility of a corporate. It talks about the uh, negative or positive impact made by the organization through its activity or decision. And when it involves these two terms, activity and decision, and it obviously impact the profit, it obviously impact the people within and outside the organization and the planet. So these three aspect has been part of the management policies now. Every company, when you go and read about their management policy on their website, you will find this triple bottom line approach. But now what ESG talks about is assessing the impact that these three verticals are having due to your activities and decisions and reporting on them. So it's not just part of the strategy, but also taking action towards the people, planet, and profit, and how these are interconnected. So I hope that answers your question, Shirishi.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the audience wants to ask any more questions?
Actually, I had another question, but
Sure,
I'll
sure, no,
first.
sure, Shirish, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I just the other question that it was based on the last question you raised, which is does it really impact on the ground this kind of reporting? Uh, the question that came to mind is, are the ESG reports verified or validated at all by any agency? Uh, Probably even randomly. Not necessarily each report needs to be verified, but because it's going to be a humongous task. But randomly, is there a process for any kind of verification of these reports as well?
Thank you, Shirishi. Once again, that's really an important question because when we report on ESG or sustainability as a compiled document that goes on the website of an organization or the annual report of the organization, it is important that it should be validated on every aspect. So like I just showed on as Infosys as one of the example, these reports before getting out in public need to be assured by one of the auditing firm that has experience of doing so in the market. So Infosys clearly mentioned that KPMG has validated their results. When we talk about the impacts or the policies making impact within the organization, the statutory requirement or framework that we have as a Companies Act for reporting on different verticals, it is important that the internal auditors plus external auditors, such as ISO auditors, need to validate them. And when it comes to carbon emission or GHG emissions related disclosures, like I mentioned, the science-based target, such kind of entities certify them. When it compiles as a ESG or sustainability report, it goes to one of the certifying body, that is either Global Reporting Initiative or SASB or one of the standard who thoroughly checks it as per the standard, whether they have disclosed everything, whether they are hiding anything. And the main core crux when we get as a training on these kind of sustainability reporting standard, the core crux of the standard is to bring the transparency by these standards. So this is a long answer to your question, but these are getting checked by various standard forming bodies within the organization, outside the organization, and then put in public. It is also important not to miss, but it is also important if you go to the bottom of any sustainability report, they do mention any discrepancy or any queries need to be forwarded to the either the ombudsman or the reporting manager of the organization.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think Gautami, Bhor, and Swapnil have questions. So maybe we can take Gautami first.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. I had a question regarding the new updated GRI 2021 standards. So, like we just saw in the Infosys report, I think they have reported according to the old 2016 standards right now. And according to the new GRI standards, it is mentioned in their reporting framework that there needs to be a more of an impact focus, as in how an organization has an impact on the environment, economy, and the society, rather than just looking at the impacts that these three factors have on the business. It's supposed to be the other way around. So I was just wondering how are Indian companies looking at this particular aspect as to how they're creating an impact on the environment, economy, and society, and not just putting it up in a reporting framework, but actually taking action on it as a part of their due diligence. So I just wanted to get an idea about what's going on in that space.
Gautamiji, thank you. And that's really a broad question that has extensive answer maybe, but I will try and sum it up in the few words. Organizations are taking efforts not just to report, but also to make an impact. Because as you rightly mentioned that they are reporting. When you report, you also need to, as rightly the Infosys report also highlighted, you need to also show the progress, what has happened in last year and what is happening present. So how you are making progress on it. It's taken seriously by the board of directors nowadays in the company. Some companies are also forming the sustainability board within the organization, which is similar to the CSR board or other financial risk related boards that they have or committee that they have. And these are taken very seriously and monitored very seriously within the organization. That's what the trend that it's visible everywhere within the sustainability circle that I have around me. On the GRI side, like you mentioned, the GRI standards recently got updated, and fortunately I'm certified. I got certified for that as well. Presently, they have kept it inactive mode, so as to say. People are still, till end of this last financial year, people will still report on GRI 2016. But going forward, and by end of this year, you will start seeing they are aligned to the new updated GRI standards.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Swapnil, you have a question.
Hi.
Hi, Swapnil.
Hi, Mr. Mandar. The presentation was very informative, and you had some good illustrations to make your point. We are a MSME, so is there anything that MSMEs can do at our level to start that small change? That was just a question from my end.
Yeah, again, it has a broader answer, or maybe we can connect offline. I'm ready to help on that context. Just to answer that, irrelevant of the size of the company, we can start the practice. Even though you are MSME, I believe that your customer will definitely start asking about these. Not after 6 months. It will immediately start, I guess, because
Right.
the customers or we are as a supplier, MSME as a supplier to their customer, they are having pressure from their own board and their consumers or customers that we need to have some strategy from our supply chain or value chain to add value to our strategies of ESG. So
Right.
irrespective of whether you're MSME or a big organization, it is always better to start immediately and not to wait till somebody asks for it.
Right. Right.
So yeah, we can connect later on. I will just put down my email here in chat box, and
Sure.
I'll be more than happy to help.
Yes. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, I had a related follow-on question, but which is in the context of MSMEs, when they are actually as one of the suppliers to larger organizations who are mandated for ESG reporting, wouldn't they be also required to actually maintain certain aspects of the ESG itself? So in a sense, they would be forced to be doing certain things as suppliers to these organizations.
See, we need to look at the practicality as well and feasibility. I cannot go and ask my supplier, who is actually a smaller size, has really low capacity or bandwidth to implement everything within the organization. I cannot go and ask them that from tomorrow onwards, I will need your scope emissions completely zero, or your policies around certain policies need to be strengthened. You can definitely ask, but you need to understand the feasibility and practicality of certain ESG risks that are connected to that particular supplier. I mean, if the supplier is providing you, say, maybe just plastic only, and the single use of plastic, and also EPR, extended producers responsibility, is something that will hamper your relation and your supply from the such kind of suppliers, then only related to that you can start with, and slowly do hand holding of those suppliers, because they need to survive and you also need to scale up your operations. And this cannot happen by just pushing certain things on the suppliers which are smaller in size. So relevance has to be checked in, practicality has to be checked in, and then only the give and take can start.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are we having any more questions? Okay, so before we close, I would like to thank Mandar for such an insightful presentation and the kind of discussions we had on this floor. I'm sure it was very interesting to all. And now that we have shared your email ID, I'm hoping more people will connect with you offline as well for such discussions.
Definitely.
Yes.
I would also like to thank once again PKC for having me, and to the audience for being such a wonderful listener and started interacting on this topic. Thank you very much, Ashwini.
Yeah. So before we close, I would like all the participants here, I think few of them have left, but whoever are remaining, to please switch on their cameras for a minute. We'll have a quick group photo before we close. Yeah. Gaurav, Swapnil, Reema, if possible, if you can switch on your cameras for a second. Okay, maybe it's not possible for them to switch on the camera for some reasons. No problem. Sheetal, can we have a quick group photo, please?
Yeah. Yeah. Done. Yeah. Thank you so much, all of you.
Done?
Yeah. Done.
Okay. So once again, thank you, Mandar. And we will be in touch. Of course, we are working quite closely with Praj now. So we'll be in touch in future as well. And thank you once again for participating in the Sust-En series. And like I said, we do it once a month or once in 2 months. So please keep an eye on this space. We do send out invites for these talks on social media, on our handles, as well as on our PKC websites. Okay, bye till then. Thank you.
Thank you.